Today I'm going to show you how to make the N95 mask cover with ties. So you're going to need pins, you're going to need your scissors, you're going to need a pipe cleaner that's been cut at about 4 inches long. You're going to need your fabric, which you can cut from the pattern that is included on the Med Threads Volunteers Nashville Facebook page. Each of these pieces is going to be 10 inches by 12 inches. Okay, and you need 2 of them. And then you're going to need ties. Now, I have 2 things here to show you because depending on what we have at the time, you will either get some of this paracord, okay, for enough to cut 4 pieces at about 18 inches, or you will get 4 pieces of twill tape. If you get twill tape, what I would do is I would take each one and tie just an overhand knot in the end of one end of the twill tape, all 4 pieces, and that's going to be your outside ends, and these ends are going to be sewn into the mask, okay? If you get the paracord, I've already sort of prepped these. I'm going to show you another piece. So the paracord has a kind of an inner what would you call this, filler, I guess. And the cord actually will work without taking it out, but it's much nicer and it's much stretchier and nicer for ties if you do take it out. And so if you just cut your lengths at 18 and then just sort of coax these out, you'll easily be able to pull these out of the outside of the cord. And these can just be, you know, discarded. And then what you need to do is take a cigarette lighter or a candle or a match or something and basically singe the ends of this because it is nylon and it will seal the ends and won't let them ravel. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Sorry about that. I had forgotten my lighter, my weird AC/DC lighter that I don't know where it came from, but anyway, I've acquired it. So you just take the ends of these and light your lighter and literally just stick them in the flame for just a second. And what's going to happen is that is going to seal up that edge where it will not ravel. Okay? So you want to do that to all 4 of your pieces once you get them cut. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of the short sides of the fabric. So it's 12, by 10 inches. So we're going to take one of the 10-inch sides and we're going to put right sides to right sides and match up the edge. And we're going to sew that together, okay, at 3/8 of an inch. So, right there, okay. Try to keep my hand out of the way. It's a little tricky. We're going to sew that. We're going to back stitch, and then we're going to sew forward. And then back stitch at the end. So we're going to have one seam there, okay? And then we are going to take our pipe cleaner. Here's my pipe cleaner. And I'm going to bend in about 1/2 inch on each end. Doesn't have to be exact. We just don't want those pokey ends sticking out through the fabric, okay? And then I'm going to find the center of my pipe cleaner. I can just make a little bend there to find the center. And I'm going to find the center of the seam that I just sewed. And it's marked on the pattern, but I can also just fold it in half here, and I can clip, or I can make a little mark there so that I know that's the center, okay? And then I'm going to line this center of the fabric up with the center of my pipe cleaner. And you can just hold it there, but also I kind of like to put a pin. So I just take a pin and kind of into the fabric and then over the pipe cleaner, and that just holds it in place while I'm sewing it. So I'm going to put this under my presser foot. I'm going to put my machine on the widest zigzag it will do, and I'm going to zigzag over, back stitching a little bit and then forward stitching. On the seam allowance, I'm going to zigzag this pipe cleaner. Go back, okay? Now what we're going to have is this pipe cleaner affixed to the seam allowance, and when we turn this right side out, it'll be hidden, but it will be there to bend around the nose of the person that wears the mask to secure it. So I have my 10 by 12 piece of fabric, 2 pieces of fabric, right sides to right sides. I have sewn at 3/8 this top seam, and I have zigzagged my pipe cleaner into the, matching up the centers into the seam allowance. So now I'm going to turn it up this way, and what I want to do is I want to sew the bottom seam of the mask. I want to match up my edges, and I want to sew this bottom seam at 1/4 inch. Okay? Okay, so don't do what I did and forget to take your machine off of the zigzag, okay? So you want to straight stitch this. And we're just going to stitch at 1/4 inch, we're going to back stitch, and then we're going to stitch forward all the way across. Okay. So there we have that seam done. So now you can see I have my 3/8 seam, and I have my lined up in the middle pipe cleaner, zigzagged in that seam allowance, and then I have my 1/4 inch seam at the bottom. So now what I'm ready to do is I'm going to sew in my ties, okay? So this is going to be a funny mask because I'm going to use 2 ties like this, and then I'm going to use 2 ties that are made out of the twill tape so you can sort of see how each one works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my top ties out of this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up here, okay, and I'm going to slide them inside, and I want to just leave a little bit sticking out there at that seam. Okay, so I'm right below that top seam, and I'm going to just pin that in so that it'll stay in place. So you can see it just kind of sticks out a little bit, and the rest of it is inside here. Okay, and then I'm going to take the other one for this top, and I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to open this up, I'm going to stick that guy in there, and I'm just going to make sure that just a little bit sticks out here, okay? And I'm going to take a pin, and I'm going to pin that in so he doesn't move around, okay? Now, I'm going to do the bottom ones with this twill tape, and we'll do it exactly the same way. Remember how we tied those knots? So we're going to put the knotted end inside here, like we're stuffing it in our little pillow, and we're going to lay the twill tape flat so that just a little bit of it extends outside of the fabric here, okay? And I know I'm getting where you guys can't see it. It's very hard to do something into a camera. Okay, so I'm laying this flat. I hope you can see that. And I'm just letting a little bit of it extend out, and then I'm taking a pin and pinning it so it'll stay in place. And then I'm going to do that with this side, okay? So I'm going to take my other piece of twill tape, and I'm going to stick the knotted side inside here. And I'm going to take the edge and just let it stick out just a little bit, and then I'm going to pin that in place. So basically all of my ties are inside here except for what's just sticking out on the edge, okay? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew just this little area where my ties are sticking out, okay? Excuse me. Sew where the ties are and backstitch them several times to make sure that they're really nice and secure. Okay, so my tie's inside. I'm gonna stitch and backstitch several times across where the tie is at 1/4 of an inch or less. Okay, so I've really gone over and over that guy. So he's very securely in there. Everybody see that? And I would do the same thing for the nylon tie. So I'm just gonna put it in here, put my presser foot down, make sure I'm about 1/4 of an inch, and you'll see that that nylon will really flatten out, especially if you've taken the filler out of it. And so we're just gonna stitch and backstitch that again at 1/4 inch and inside 1/4 inch. So I've done it several times and you can see that it's nice and secure. So I'm gonna do that to all 4 of my ties. So all 4 of my ties, doesn't look very pretty, but have been sewn in very securely at 1/4 of an inch, backstitched and forward stitched several times. Okay, and now what I'm going to do down each side is I'm going to stitch to about the center of the mask and then leave about a 2-inch opening on one side and then stitch it down, and then on the other side of the mask I'm going to stitch all the way down. That little opening is so we can turn it, okay, right side out. When you do this, make sure that you've kind of shaken your ties away from the edge of that because you don't want to sew any other part of your tie into the seam. And these seams are going to be at 1/4 of an inch. So the first seam I'm going to sew at 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to sew back and forth again to secure my seam. I'm going to sew over that tie again, and I'm going to sew, this doesn't have to be exact, but you know, almost to the middle, and then I'm going to backstitch, and then I'm going to take my needle and push my presser foot up, and I'm going to skip down about 2.5 inches, and I'm going to start my seam again, okay? And again, backstitch and forward stitch. It does not matter which side you do this on. Okay, and then once we do that, I'm going to turn around. So we've got this little gap here, right? That'll be an opening right there. And then on the other side, I'm going to make sure I shake my ties down. They aren't anywhere on my seam. And I'm just going to sew the entire seam here because I only need one little opening to turn the mask. So we're going to sew back. We're going to sew it 1/4 of an inch all the way down. Cross our other tie and backstitch, okay? And then we can trim our threads. Scoot my little machine back. So we can trim off all our excess threads here. All right. And then that little opening that we left open here, I'm going to clip those threads that are sort of left. And we're going to open up this little opening. Oh, come here, little opening. So we can open that up and we can just kind of smush the rest of the mask through there and turn it right side out. You can leave your opening a little larger if you don't like to struggle like I am with this, but we're going to close that opening up eventually anyway. Your ties are going to come out at this point too when you turn. Let me smash this down in here a little bit more. Once you get it all in there, then you can kind of shake it. And the really cool thing about this is that you can pull the ties and they kind of make everything come out nice and square, okay? All right, so this is what it's gonna look like. My little opening is still open there, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press this now, and I'm gonna make sure that I fold in 1/4 of an inch there and press it in when I press this all over. So here's my beautiful pressed mask, and you can see it has 2 ties at the bottom, or actually that's the top because that's where my pipe cleaner is, and 2 ties at the bottom. Again, yours will all be the same material. I'm just showing how the twill tape works as well as the paracord, and it just depends on what we have the most of, what you will get. So now what we're going to do is we're going to mark our pleats. So I want to make sure that I know that this is the top where my pipe cleaner is in there. And there's a pleating guide included with your pattern, okay? And so this will be the top because that's where the 3/8 seam is. So I'm going to lay this on top of this and match up sort of the edges where the dotted lines are. That's my seam lines. And if you'll see over here, you'll see that there's a pleating guide, okay? And so what we can do there is we can take a pencil, or we can take, I like this little marking pen that disappears eventually. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark these little marks that show where my 1 5/8 pleats will go between my inch spacing. So I'm just matching these up and making a little mark. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay. So I can, what I like to do sometimes is I will just take the other side and fold it sort of to the first side I've marked and match up my edges, and then just mark the same distances on there. Or you can just line it up again with the pleating guide and mark those marks on there, okay? So what this is going to do is these larger spaces are going to become pleats, and the smaller spaces, the inch spaces, are going to be like the distance in between the pleats. So now that I've marked my marks to match up my pleats, I want to make sure I have the top at the top of the mask, because each of the pleats is going to go down on the front, okay? So it's very important to have your top here, and you'll know that because that's where your pipe cleaner is, okay? And then we're just going to fold those marks where we have those marks down to the next mark. So the first mark goes to the second mark, okay? The third mark goes to the fourth mark. The fifth mark goes to the sixth mark, and the seventh mark goes to the eighth mark, okay? And we'll do that on both sides. And hopefully if we have matched, if we have put our pleating marks on there correctly, then it will match up. I like to do one side and then do the other side. Some people will make a pleating board where they can just fold it up in there like with a piece of cardboard or paper. You can do one side and then do the other side like I'm doing now, like making sure that they're nice and straight and flat across. You want to make sure that your edges stay lined up as you do this, the edges of your mask, okay? So you can kind of pinch this, pull it down, and if I had a third hand, that would be really cool, but I don't. So I'm just going to pin that in place, and then I'll pin this other one in place. And we're just matching the marks. That's all we're doing, okay? And pinning. All right, and then we have one more. So you'll have 4 pleats total. There's a picture, a little illustration in your pattern that show the pleating direction down at the bottom. Okay. Perfect. All right. And if you want, you can press these. I'm going to go ahead and press them down just so they stay in place really nicely while I'm sewing. So I've pressed my pleats in here and I have them all pinned in place. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down this side at about an eighth, between an eighth and a quarter of an inch, because that's going to close up that little opening too that we left to turn it right side out, and it's going to secure those pleats. Then we're going to go at about an eighth of an inch here, an eighth of an inch here, and then when we get up to the top, we're going to have to be a little careful because of the way that pleat folds up to go right around the edge. And also we have that piece of pipe cleaner. I don't know why I can't say that word. Pipe cleaner in there. So I'm just going to edge stitch at an eighth of an inch all the way around the mask. Back stitching and then stitching forward. We're going to secure our pleats. Come on, guy. There you go. Pull out my pins as I go. And then I'm going to leave my needle in here at the corner, and I'm going to lift my presser foot and pivot, and then sew it an eighth of an inch here. Just top stitching and reinforcing. And then again, when we get to this corner, we can leave our needle in and pivot, and we'll do an eighth of an inch here. Making sure your pleats stay in place. Ooh. He wants to get caught up under there. There we go. And then we're going to really carefully pivot again, and we're going to try to do this at an eighth of an inch, just right on the edge. We'll see if that pipe cleaner cooperates with us. Okay. Oh, wasn't any trouble. And then when we get back over to the other corner, we'll backstitch and trim our threads. And this is what it's going to look like. Oh, I guess I need to do that. So you've got top stitch all the way around. You've got your bendy pipe cleaner here, and you're able to open the mask up very largely to cover those N95 masks. All right. Very good. Just a quick little tip here. When you're sewing the top part of this mask, if you look on the bottom, I mean the back side, you'll see that this pleat is very close to where you're going to be stitching. And so what you may want to do is after you round the corner there, you may want to actually unfold that pleat as you're sewing across, and then just fold it back up as you get to the corner, because I caught the edge of my pleat a couple of places because it was extending up so far. So I had to go back and seam rip, and I'm going to re-stitch this top part. So I just wanted to let you know about that little bit of troubleshooting. So from the front it looked great, and then when I tried to unfold it, it was caught in the pleat in a couple of places. So I hope that helps you to avoid that problem.